guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel Crackle on the Beat with myself, Vicky. I'm a radio presenter and music journalist that just loves obsessing and addressing all things music. So if that's your kind of thing, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, like, share, all of that jazz, and we'll get into it. So before we get into it, just a couple of disclaimers. I have been out of the loop for a little while. Sorry guys. There's just been a lack of music that I really wanted to review, to be honest, and with Christmas and winter and life getting in the way, it's been a little bit quiet over here at Crackle on the Beat, but we are back into it, and I am so excited to talk about this particular album that I'm going to be talking about today. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about Charli XCX's brand new album. We've gone from Brat Summer to a Wuthering Heights gothic winter. And that is what we are going to be looking at today. So Charli XCX, who is she? I mean, we've all heard of Charli in the past 2 years. Brat Summer, one of the biggest, most influential Brat girl, party girl, techno, hyper pop sensations of this generation. And she has completely and utterly thrown away the rule book for what we thought she was going to deliver. You thought it was going to be party, you thought it was going to be pop, you thought it was going to be heavy. Think again. So Charli XCX, well, her real name's Charlotte Emma Aitchison. She's a British singer-songwriter from London, I believe. Her genres have been very much described as hyper pop, experimental dance, electro, sort of style that we all sort of love, festivals, rave, very rave culture, and she has turned into this sort of gothic soundscape that we hear today. She made a lot of commercial success sort of back in 2010 with songs such as Fancy, I Love It, and Boom Clap. You know, she was doing well, but she wasn't doing Brat Summer kind of well. Speaking of Brat, you know, that was her breakthrough album, which came out on June 7th of 2024, and it absolutely changed cultural fashion and musical expansion. It was wild, and if you weren't there for Brat Summer, then where the hell were you? But what are we actually talking about? I mean, Brat's been out for 2 years now, nearly 2 years. So what are we really talking about today? Well, we're talking about the brand new album, Wuthering Heights. It came out on the 13th of February of this year, so it's still extremely fresh. It was going to be, well, it is the soundtrack behind Emily Bronte's new adaptation of Wuthering Heights. It's a very gothic, tragic, very female-led sort of film. I've read the books before. I'm yet to see the film with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, but I am going to watch it very soon, and I'm going to see how it all ties into the movie. But Wuthering Heights itself is such a beautiful gothic classic, and I couldn't believe that Charli, the hyper pop, techno, party girl, messy, bratty girl, was gonna be the soundtrack behind it all, behind this sort of prestigious gothic romantic film. I couldn't believe it, but she was. So here we go, let's have a look. So what I really want to look at today, I mean, yes, we are going to look at the album and we're going to sort of review it a little bit together, but what I really want to look at is the transition. This today is really about the transition. I have never really reviewed a transition like this in this kind of way. It's always been very song-based, album-based, but this is going to be looking at how she has gone from something like Brat to Wuthering Heights, and that transition gap in between, and how it all ties together. That is what we're going to be looking at today. So we go from a Brat Summer to a Wuthering Winter, this gothic soundscape that she's just sort of sunken into. It is so interesting and very telling of her character. The soundtrack, Wuthering Heights, is Charli's 7th studio project. So it is a biggie. It is a biggie. So as I briefly explained before, it is inspired by Emily Bronte's novel Wuthering Heights. You know, Charlie captured the raw, wild, sexual, gothic and tortured side that kind of wraps up the overall theme and the sound of this album. One of the first songs that I listened to on this album was House, featuring John Cale, and also Wall of Sound as well, which hinted at sort of more, I don't know, darker, more baroque and haunting sound. And, you know, while some listeners may lean into this version of Charlie, some might not approve because it's very, very, very different to what they identified her with. You know, some might say it is a very, very dramatic genre shift, and it is, but I'm also gonna be digging into why it really isn't that dramatic a change and how she kind of already was this gothic queen to begin with. You know, this genre might be a little different, but it is not actually too dissimilar to Brat if you really read between the lines. The messiness, the distortion, the frayed edges and the black aesthetic that we did see Charlie sport a lot during the Brat era, despite the toxic green iconic album colour. Brat is like sort of like the techno version of goth. It's cyber goth. You know, Brat isn't just poppy, it is kind of gothic, cyber gothic. Whereas Wuthering Heights, on the other hand, is a sort of classic romantic tragedy goth. So, you know, if you really, really want to peel back the layers and you really want to read between the lines, it's not as different as you might think. In sound, perhaps, mostly, but in essence, there are some similarities. You know, some critics may believe that it's nothing like Brat as it's more brutal in tone. However, this album, Wuthering Heights, was written to serve the world of film, whereas Brat was written to serve the world of party. To me, this shift with Wuthering Heights really feels like a dramatic come down to Brat, you know, in every way that you can think of. But it's still very, very linked. You know, I really like the idea of Charlie stepping into film and jumping genres so quickly, as it removes her from stagnating in this Brat box forever, and it definitely shows her versatility as an artist in the industry. Although as a predisposition, I do think no matter how well Wuthering Heights will do, I don't think anything will replace the success level of marketing that Brat took over. However, I do think that Wuthering Heights gives Charlie as an artist an opportunity to be taken a lot more seriously for future collaborations. You know, she very, very much has sort of stayed in this sort of, like I've said, this party box, and now she can be inside the TV, inside the film, you know, the behind the sound of a film, which I think is absolutely incredible. Not just one song, but the entire album to be carrying Wuthering Heights, I think is very, very, very much almost as successful as Brat in its own right, not in the same way, but in its own right. So when I was listening to the album, particularly the song House, it very, very much gave me Crystal Castles. Alice Practice, a very distorted song, kind of hyper pop goth at the same time. And I really, really kind of got that essence of Crystal Castles, especially from the song House. Very, very different in general, like overall, but that part where she's really pushing and screaming and pushing the vocal out, that to me was scratchy, raw, and it really made me think of Alice Practice, the song by Crystal Castles. There's both dark fashion and dark aesthetics with Charlie herself as an artist in both of them. You know, one is techno-esque and the other is tragedy classic. So, you know, Brat is upbeat, it is glitchy, and it is full of energy, and it is extremely explosive, and it really, really took off. Wuthering Heights is slower, more instrumental, more grandiose, more tortured, and very, very, very deep. So I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the songs because I just couldn't get enough of it. And here we are today to talk about Wuthering Heights. So House, yes, very dramatic, haunting, melancholic, gothic, Very, very, very horror film based, you know, rich in scripted monologue and simple tragic lyrics that make you feel trapped. It evokes entanglement, entrapment as well. You know, I think I'm gonna die in this house. It's so existential. Again, just to summarize Wall of Sound, even though we've already spoken about it a little bit, it is very vulnerable, very romantic, very auto-tuned as well, which is still very similar to some of her slow versions of Brat. It's reflective, it's anticipating, and it's very emotively building. It still has that haunting vibe, but, you know, it's much more revealing lyrically and poetically overall. You know, she says unbelievable tension, Wall of Sound, every time I try tucking myself backwards away from my desires, something just stops me. It's so reflective and very, very truthful and very, very vulnerable. So what do I really think about this album? What do I really think? Well, personally, I'm extremely impressed with Charlie's escalation and shock genre hopping. I think it's absolutely brave and incredible for an artist like Charlie, who's put such a stamp on the Brat summer, to jump into something as different as this, or as different as it might seem at first glance. You know, I never really listened to her much before the Brat album came out. And I think that's quite a universal thing. I think a lot of people can agree that Brat was the one. But her marketing strategies and visions with her team are outstanding. I have not for a very long time seen something that has taken hold on the world quite like Brat has. I think Wuthering Heights is creeping up behind. But yeah, that's what I think. That's what I really believe. You know, her ability to push the boundaries and to not stay in one spot for too long, I think really speaks volumes on her expansion and potential as an artist, which I think leaves us wondering and guessing for more, which I think is a really amazing thing. You know, she could have brought out, her next album could have been very similar to the last, and we kind of think, okay, this is what she does. We know where she's going with this. It takes away the mystery. I think what she's done has contained mystery about her and about what she's going to do next, and I think that is what is so special about going from Brat summer to Wuthering Winter. I think she's absolutely nailed it. She knows exactly what she's doing, and so does her team. You know, she's really created this, we don't know what's going to happen next, this lack of predictability, which maybe she had in the earlier days. It was becoming predictable. As soon as she took charge of what she wanted to do, it just blew up. And I think that is such an incredible sign of a good artist, you know, when they really know what they want and they know how they're going to do it, and they don't give too much away until they give it away. Wuthering Heights isn't necessarily a breakthrough, it's just different. It's more cinematic in nature, and, you know, some might argue it's not really her, like that it's not really her style, and that she's kind of only really having to do this to inject part of herself into the film, you know, part of her sound into what the film needs. So there is that point, that argument of saying, you know, is this really Charlie, or is this just what she's having to adapt for the film? That's the question, you know. Is this something she would bring out herself if it wasn't for Wuthering Heights, if she didn't have to adapt it to a film? I don't know. I think it'd probably still be quite clubby, quite rave centric if it was really her sort of album alone and it wasn't to do with the film. But who knows? I think even if it is for the film, I still think this says a lot about what she can do as an artist. So in conclusion, you know, Charli XCX has been surprising us and gearing us up and throwing more than we can handle at us since 2024 with Brat. Her marketing team have skyrocketed her, and her raw energy, ferociousness, unapologetic ways, and her independence in the direction of her music, which has taken her further in her career than she has ever been, which is just fantastic. Wuthering Heights has really shown us another side to her, which is very important as an artist that wants to sort of, you know, really be heard by lots and lots and lots of different people. I do think Wuthering Heights has shown us another side to her. You know, it is drawing people in from other audiences. It might be pushing people out that like Brat, but drawing other people in. You know, it might be just bulking up her audience in general. Who knows? I do think it is something, you know, that is being adapted for a gothic film. And, you know, had Charlie just been making this for herself, would it sound the same? Probably not. Does it matter? No, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. I think the whole point was for it to be different. You know, could arguably not be her most authentic version, you know, like Brat, where she was left to her own devices. Nonetheless, I do think Wuthering Heights has given us a taste of how much further Charlie can and will continue to push the boundaries within her artistry. She's not just the party girl next door, and she's showing us that. So, Charli XCX, from Brat Summer to Wuthering Winter, as I like to call it, that is a wrap. What do you think of the album? Have you seen the film? Have you listened to the album? What are your favourite songs? Let me know in the comments. I love to discuss it. I'm going to put a link in the comments of where you can listen to Wuthering Heights. And we can discuss it. I really, really love the conversation. The conversation does not end here. Please feel free. Let me know what you want me to review next as well. And until next time, peace.